Yeah, so I'm Mike Francis. As Trish said, I'm work for her section, and I'm the Forest Health Technical Specialist for Sault Ste. Marie area. And usually Dan Rolson is giving this presentation, but Trish said he's actually just coming back today from Thunder Bay doing some consultations for jackpine budworm. And Dan had told me, he said, oh yeah, you can put your own spin on my presentation. And I've worked with Dan for over 20 years. When he said my own spin, I'm not sure if he realized what kind of spin I could put on it. But today, my spin is going to be, like for the last 5 to 10 years, we've been talking a lot about invasive pests. But there's been a cry from the wilderness in Ontario from our native pests that we're out here. And the way they cried was they created 1.7 million hectares between 3 bugs alone, forest ant caterpillar, spruce budworm, and jackpine budworm. So they said, don't forget us. So hopefully in the near future we'll have some more talks about our native pests. I know Barry's going to be talking about spruce budworm, but that cry has been heard. So just think of that as I'm going through the presentation. There are some invasive pests I'll be talking about, but the majority of it is our native pests that are creating landscape damage. So first of all, I'd like to thank a few people. David, he is with the Invasive Species Center, and he does the insect diagnostics. Sylvia with MNRF, she does pathology. Trish is the manager of biodiversity and monitoring, and Sheila, Duckett, Dave Etheridge, and Corey Carvath are the regional coordinators for bands for biodiversity and monitoring. Also like to thank Dan Licks. He's our GIS guy, and he put most of the maps together that you're going to see today. And also, I'd like to thank all the amazing staff that we have in the field to collect all this data. And I'd also like to thank Ariel Illick, who's one of our forest health technical specialists, and he has put together a lot of this presentation because I was on the road. So the forest health staff, Dan Rolson is the field coordinator. In the Northwest, we have Kirsten Hicks, Hannah Keefe, and Vance Boudreau. In the Northeast, we have Leah Fricano, Cheryl Woodfield, myself. As you can see, I have the smallest area, but I help most of the people across the province. Chris McVitie, Ariel Illick, and in the southern region, we have 4 people, Vanessa Jambroni, Paulette Hebert, and Susan McGowan, and Rebecca Lister, who all do a great job out there. So the first pest we're going to talk about is forest ant caterpillar, a major defoliator of aspen and other hardwoods. So when we look at the graph over time, you can almost set your watch for 10 to 12 years. You're going to have an infestation or an outbreak that lasts 3 to 5 years. So in last year in 2017, you can see the majority of it was in the northeast and southern regions with a smaller area in the northwest region, but it was a major shift last year where in 2016 most of the defoliation was in the northwest region. So we're having it collapsing in the northwest and increasing in the northeast and south. As you can see here, there was almost 1 million hectares of moderate to severe defoliation across the province, most of it in northeast and southern regions, with it collapsing in the northwest. As you can see here, there's only a few small pockets of defoliation as moderate to severe, and that's 38 hectares. Most of it was light, so it is collapsing in the northwest. In the northeast, you can see here where it's been in the northern part of the region for since 2014, and it's starting to kind of break up in the northern areas, but it has increased in the southern areas of the northeast region. And as well, it has kind of filled in the southern region where it's doubled in size of up to over 400,000 hectares in 2018, and it's increasing in the Parry Sound District as well. Moving on to Spruce Budworm. I always like to use this. When we saw the last graph of forest tank caterpillar, it was so nice, up and down, very trend. And Taylor Scar has always said about this graph, it's like a toilet seat. It's up and down for Spruce Budworm infestation. So last year, we've had an infestation up in the northern part of Northeast region in Timmins, Cochrane, and Hearst districts, and a bit of Chapleau, and just a bit of defoliation in the North Bay district. It's kind of collapsed there in 2013. And in the south, we had small little pockets in white spruce plantations. 2018, there was a bit of a decrease, and it's kind of breaking up in the northern parts, but it picked up over in the North Bay district in 2018. And in the south, we'll look at the northeast first here. It almost looks like the identical map, but there was a small area in southern region. So here it is in the northeast, breaking up in the northern areas, still quite a bit, but it has increased in North Bay and in Sudbury district as well as on Manitoulin Island. And here in the southern region, this is the third consecutive year there's been defoliation in this area, and ironically, it's called Balsam Lake Provincial Park, which Spruce Budworm, if you don't know, prefers balsam over white spruce. But it's only a small area, and historically it's been there in the past as well. So our Spruce Budworm pheromone trapping results, we had 63 locations in 2018, and the highest numbers were in the southern region, but you got to remember that those are in kind of plantations areas where they're concentrated with white spruce, where in the northern areas it's more wood areas, different kind of landscape. So in the northeast region, we had an average of 192 moths per trap. The highest was in just north of North Bay in Blythe Township, 630 moths per trap. And we were actually kind of concerned about that area, but there was no defoliation this year, but there's red spruce in that area. So we're always on the lookout, and there always seems to be a high count. The balsam fir, understory balsam fir that gets affected there. So in the northwest region, we had an average of 11 moths per trap, which last year there was hardly any spruce budworm there at all. But this year, we've seen an increase, and it was, basically most of it was in the Kenora district. Sorry, in the southern region, it had some high counts, the highest counts, 220. So here's the map. As you can see, where the infestation is, you can see where most of the high counts of moths are, but they're starting to increase over towards Sault Ste. Marie. And we'll see what happens in 2019. So switching now to jack pine budworm, which was closely related to spruce budworm up to 1953. It was thought to be spruce budworm, but on jack pine. So here's another graph. It looks a little better than the spruce budworm one, but not as good as the forest tank caterpillar one, where you kind of see where the infestations are. As you can see, like last time we had what we thought was the outbreak was 2005. But now in 2015, we're starting to see another increase in the infestation. So in 2017, there's just over 100,000 hectares of defoliation. Most of it was in, or all of it was in the Red Lake district. There was some mortality mapped in the Sault Ste. Marie district, and that was from a jack pine outbreak that lasted only 2 years. 2016, 2017. So in 2018, there was a huge jump almost 6 times as much defoliation over in the Red Lake District, and more mortality was mapped over in the Sault Ste. Marie District. So here it is in the Sault Ste. Marie District. So 2016, 2017, there was the, 2015, 2016, there was defoliation, and then we started to get mortality. 2017, mortality was just north of there, and now we mapped this year was a lot more, and we're attributing some of that mortality. The start of it was from jack pine bloodworm, but with the kind of drought in the fall and those, like in 2016, 2017, we had really warm Septembers. If you remember, it got up to 30, and that seemed to have an effect on some of the trees. So here we are, the big red patch. This is one of the big cries that I was talking about that coming from the north. Jack pine bloodworm there's lots of defoliation. Lots of it is inaccessible. It's in the white feather forest. And we're going to see what's going to happen to it next year. Jack pine bloodworm trapping results. We kind of had for the jack pine bloodworm pheromone trapping program, normally we see 2 or 3 bloodworm per trap. And we're always skeptic if the lure is working because it's a relatively new lure. But this year, the numbers were kind of off the chart for just about every area because we were used to getting 2 to 3 moths, but now we were getting, 40, 50, sometimes in the northwest we had up to 133. So in the northeast, the highest was 77 moths trapped in the Nairn Township and Sudbury District. In northwest, we had 133, and the southern region, 44. So when you look at the map here, you can see that there's a huge increase in the moth in the northeast, and of course in the northwest you can see it up there as well. There's lots high numbers. So with the high numbers and the defoliation, it prompted an L2 survey. And I was just up there with the crews in the northwest and a few people from the northeast to help do the L2 sampling. So for the people out there that don't know about jack pine bloodworm, they overwinter a second instar larva, hence the L2. So that gives us a chance to sample branches because they overwinter in the bark scales. We can sample branches and we bring them back to the lab, and then we can count the number of larvae through a washing and filtering process, and that can give us a forecast of what's going to happen in 2019. And that would support a possible forest pest management program. So the second instar larva survey, we've done 53 in the northwest and 12 in the northeast. Here you can see the ones in the northeast. Basically, we sampled at locations where there were high counts for moths, but also tied together with historical information where there had been infestations before. And here you can see the northwest, a lot more intensive sampling, and after the results that we see from our L2 extractions and forecasting, we may have to go out again and do some more sampling in the northwest to key in areas for a possible insect pest management program. Moving on to another pest, large aspen tortrix. So the aspen is second only to forest tent caterpillar in defoliation, damage to aspen trees. So in 2017, we had just over 48,000 hectares, all in the Timmins and Chapleau area. And then in 2018, a bit of a decline, but it kind of is collapsing where it was, and it's kind of moving a bit south of where it was in 2017. So fall cankerworm, this was in the paper a lot, it's in southern Ontario. In 2017, here you can see around Lake Ontario where it was over 11,000 hectares of defoliation, a lot of outcry from the public, lots of private land. But this year, in 2018, it almost collapsed. And that's the nature of the fall cankerworm, where it has a short span of damage, and then it collapses. So gypsy moth, I believe this is our first invasive pest we're going to hit on. And as you can see here, it's not a bad graph for that either. As we look at it, since 2016, it has started to increase. Our last outbreak was over in the Sudbury district, where we had over 40,000 hectares of defoliation. So in 2017, it was over in the Guelph district, over in around between Hamilton and in the Niagara Falls area, and small pockets over in the southwest and the Elmer district. There's the increase this year, and it has kind of spread northeast over up into the Aurora district, and the ones in the southwest has kind of collapsed, but there's still a few little pockets over towards the Windsor area. Cedar leaf miner. Always seem to be mapping this every year, but it doesn't really get too high at times. Only over almost 6,000 hectares were seen in 2017. As you can see, it was in northwest region and the southern region. And in 2018, it was generally in the same area in both regions, but in the south it has moved kind of southwest, and it was kind of collapsing in the northwest. Here you can see small pockets. Most of it is light defoliation. And in the southern region, it kind of was not collapsing, but it's smaller areas in the Kentville district where historically that's where the major defoliation is, and it's moved into the Midhurst and Aurora and Guelph districts. Large case bear, another invasive. So we don't have the 2017 up here, but this is an increase from last year's, and it's mostly in the Midhurst district in small little pockets. The eastern larch beetle, here it is. It was only mapped in the northwest in 2018, and historically it's been here for the last 3 years, but it's increased. Before it was just kind of there on the west side near Rainy River, and a small little pockets over on the east side, but it's starting to increase, and this could be driven by kind of a bit of a drought going on. Increases the activity of the larch beetle. Balsam fir sawfly, just a small area of defoliation in the Pembroke district in the southern region. This is the third consecutive year. Last year there was, I think it was just over around 500 hectares of defoliation, and it was half of it was severe and half of it was light. This year it seems to be collapsing. It was light only on 31 hectares, but all in the same area. Sand moth, another invasive, actually probably one of the most photogenic bugs you'll ever see. It was mapped in Thunder Bay district, in the city of Thunder Bay. The host is mostly European poplar, cottonwood, and balsam poplar in this case in Thunder Bay. And usually outbreaks are fairly short-lived, and they're specific to those trees, which we don't have much on at a landscape level. Pine engraver, it's pinei, small area, 15 hectares over south of Gogama, over towards Morin Village. Small area right beside the mill, that's there. It was on jack pine, and it was also found, some white spot sawyer beetle was found there, but the pine engraver beetle was the major factor there. So emerald ash borer, here we go, one of our major invasives. Here we have the map of from 2004, 2015, and 16. M&R has decided that we will be mapping this decline, ash decline from emerald ash borer every 2 years, and we're going to just map the northern extent. How much further north is it going? So here in 2018, there was 4,500 hectares mapped, and lots of ground checks to make sure that it was actually emerald ash borer. Lots of difficulties with forest tent caterpillar defoliation and other things going on, but most of the areas were checked. And as you can see, it's moving north of Peterborough. We're getting the decline and over towards the Pembroke area. We also done some emerald ash borer trapping in the northwest part of the province, and there was 20, the number escapes me right now, but we had over 20 locations, and there was no positives this year for emerald ash borer in the northwest outside of Thunder Bay. We also did mountain pine beetle trapping. There was 20 of those, and they were in jack pine stands that were in decline or susceptible to mountain pine beetle, and we collect twice a year. First round we didn't get anything, but the second round was just in August, and David is still sifting through the results to see if there was any there. Nidadulid trap locations. So we had done this last year, and we had baited oak trees by just cutting branches down and piling them up, hoping to get nidadulid beetles, who are the vector of oak quilt. And we didn't catch any last year, but the traps this year, Sharon Reed and Sylvia Riefenhagen put together a nice trapping system, and it worked really well. They've got thousands of nidadulids. I'm not sure how many species, but there's lots of species of nidadulids. And you caught over thousands. Anyways, they're still counting them and still IDing them, but there are some, I believe, nidadulids in there that are vectors of oak quilt. They don't necessarily have it, but they are vectors of oak quilt. And the trap was so good, it even trapped my picture of a nidadulid. They put them in 3 locations this year. Last year, I think we had it around 6 locations, but they kind of focused on latitudes, different latitudes of where the pests could be. So Sault Ste. Marie, and then down in near Windsor, and then over near Peterborough, south of Peterborough. Walnut twig beetle trap locations. There was 20 this year, and so far the results are in, and there's none, but we're still looking at a few of them. So walnut twig beetle is a vector of South canker disease. Armillaria root rot. So we're going to get into a bit of the diseases. There was 34 hectares mapped this year, and on some red pine in the Nipigon district over near McDermott. It was over mature red pine on a poor site, so some of the older ones were starting to drop out of the stand, and armillaria was the culprit. Brown spot needle blight. This one we always see some of it every year. This year it was kind of quite a bit of it in the southern region, and brown spot needle blight is notorious to be on Scots pine, and it's usually on pure Scots pine stands. As you can see here in the southern region in the Midhurst district, there was a lot of little small locations. As everybody knows, if they're traveling in southern Ontario, you see small stands of Scots pine. Well, they were infected with brown spot needle blight. There was a small area, and I've been mapping this area for about 7 years now, and about 3 or 4 years out of that I've mapped brown spot needle blight in the same location in Manitoulin Island in Sudbury District. And here again, you can see in the south where most of it is Midhurst District and down into the Aurora District as well, and a little bit down into Elmer. This is the southeast corner of Elmer District. So spruce needle rust, that's a later pest, and usually we're done our flying, but some of our staff in the northeast were still mapping, and they picked up a fairly big area near Marathon where there's lots of black spruce, and it's 181 hectares. And as far as spruce needle rust goes, it wasn't a great year for spruce needle rust, but we were seeing quite a bit on ground surveys. We would pick it up on smaller black spruce, but this one area was mapped in late August. Blowdown. Blowdown. We always have some blowdown, no matter what, it seems. I haven't been doing this job for over 15 years and haven't seen a year without blowdown in some part of the province. So this year we had an increase. It was up to 3,000 hectares and was in all 3 regions in 2018. In the northwest, it was kind of scattered pockets. There was a storm in June around the Ignis area, and we're not sure if the other areas were at the same time, because you can see some of them are in the far north, so a lot of this goes unreported until we're flying it, so we don't know the exact time of the damage. But most of the damage was, blowdown damage was in the northwest. We had some in the northeast over towards Chapleau, and that was another storm that happened in late June, early July, and also over towards the Kirkland Lake District. There was a small pocket, and the Chapleau District. So there you see the blowdown in southern region. It was over in the Pembroke District, small areas, and a little bit in Perry Sound. And it was a storm that happened in late June, but we also had that microburst, or that tornado that touched down kind of northwest of Ottawa. And we did not map that as of yet. That happened September 21st. We're hoping to be able to map that next year. So snow, it'll be snowing pretty soon here in Sault Ste. Marie. So just to end the presentation off with stuff about snow damage, as you can see here, there was just over 2,000 hectares of snow damage in 2018. The majority of it was in the northwest. You can see here, and this happened actually in October of 2017. And just recently when I was out there this year in October at the same time, I thought we might get the same thing because they had some snow and it was wet and there was rain in the forecast, but actually the sun came out and melted all the snow off the branches. So it's not unusual for this to happen over in the northwest, and that's mostly in the Red Lake or Kenora District. In the northeast, where the summit a bit in Chapleau, just over 100 hectares. And that's about it. This is the website where you can get the Forest Health Conditions Report. Unfortunately, the 2017 is up yet with the election from last year and everything else, a few changes. It's almost ready to go up. There's a few more approvals to happen, and then it'll be posted, and hopefully the 2018 report will be up earlier this year with the new government. There may be some changes as well, so we'll see how that goes. So that's what happened for Forest Health in Ontario in 2018.